Hello, my name's Laura Lear and welcome to the Thoughtful Leadership Podcast from Ambitious.
So have you ever wondered what it takes to cut it in Silicon Valley? Well, my guest today has a huge amount of experience when it comes to working with some of the largest tech brands, but particularly he spent 6 years at Apple, navigating creativity, helping to launch and launching successfully iPads and iPhones. I'm really excited to be joined today by Sam Oliver. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So I think one of the things that people will be really interested to understand is about your experience at Apple. But I think first of all, it'd be really good just to talk through your career before that, because obviously I know you won accolades at Cannes, and I know you've worked for a number of global leading organisations and advertising agencies. So, but yeah, it'd be great to just hear a bit about your journey.
Yeah, so I've been doing it for 25, 27 years now, which makes me sound very old. But I started at Ogilvy and then went to DDB London, where I was for 8 years. I worked a lot on Volkswagen and The Guardian and Marmite and lots of brands there. And that's when I really kind of grew up as a creative director. And then I worked at Fallon, Wieden+Kennedy and BBH, so quite big London advertising agencies, working for a variety of brands, and did that for about 15, 17 years. And did that with a partner. They sort of partner you up. You have a copywriter and art director when you start, and then you grow up as creative directors together. And then, I got headhunted by Apple about 17 years in, and it was sort of the right time for me and my family to try like a move to California. So we went. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I went out and became creative director of iPhone, and inside Apple, because they also have an agency, but actually in the internal part of Apple. And then later on it became iPad, but then we grew this sort of group inside of Apple we called it the brand team, and it ended up with 80 people, and I was running that, and we were, working on iPhone and iPad and some of the other products.
So what did they have before you came along then? Did they have that there, or was it
They had an internal department. It just wasn't structured that way. And when I first joined, I was kind of told I wouldn't be doing any advertising because it was mostly the internal marketing, the launch events, retail, all the things, but not like, films for advertising stuff. But we ended up doing that as well.
Right.
And because it's iPhone,
creep.
And it was like the biggest product in the world, I didn't quite, and it was global. I didn't quite, there was so many parts to it. It was a bit of an eye-opener.
So how did you navigate that? So coming into this obviously quite, I suppose, overwhelming beast of a organisation in the shadows of the Steve Jobs. How did you handle that and manage that, get the right team together?
Yeah, it was a bit like just sort of had to find my way a little bit. I mean, it's a very, the way Apple's structured, or was structured at least, there's lots of deep functions. So you've got lots of specialized teams.
Right.
They work quite independently, autonomously. And they're very, very good. Everyone there is very, very good, but they didn't speak to each other too much. So my role was a cross-functional creative director, was sort of trying to hook up between all these different teams and finding kind of brand strategy for all of it. It was just finding the right people and putting them together in different ways, and it was a bit trial and error. But yeah, that first iPhone launch, it was pretty crazy. I remember looking at my inbox because people would have different creative teams would review work with me, and it was just sort of filling up in front of my eyes quicker than I could actually open them, and I had a slight panic attack. So I kind of closed the laptop and went, I can't do it this way. I can't do it over email. It's just not going to work. And I said, I need to see the work on walls, because that's the way I was used to working from agencies and stuff. I need to stick in walls. But we were working in this big, huge hangar space. There weren't any walls. And I went, I can't work this way. I just, through this kind of slight hissy fit, which was unlike me, but I felt a bit bad afterwards. I was driving home. I was going, God, I should have handled that better. But I came in the next morning and they'd kind of built this room. And they'd got it all laid out. All the walls were felt, and there was a printer, and and it was all secure, so only the iPhone team could badge in and out of it, and they'd done it all overnight. And we could work the launch from there by putting everything on the walls. But what it taught me a little bit was that Apple is such a sort of can-do atmosphere. And I think being British and being kind of, slight shy and stuff. I didn't know that you could just get things done like that and get things done that quickly. And it's such a fast organization.
It sounds like that pace. I think when we spoke prior to today's interview, the kind of that pace you said is something that you've never really seen in terms of the kind of ability to get things done quickly.
Yeah, just because it's a tech brand, and tech companies have to move incredibly quickly. And when you're in the marketing world, like what I was used to is, if you're making a campaign for, I don't know, Unilever or whoever, it takes 6 to 9 months, and sometimes it could take a year, because there's lots of stages to it, and often it goes into research, and there's a lot of thinking and meetings and debate. Over there, like you don't get briefed on the products till like 2, maybe 3 months before they launch, and got to get it all done and produced, and so it's naturally works very, very fast, But the people who develop products used to that because they're doing it for only a year or whatever it is, a product a year. So it's they're used to that beta testing mentality where you just make things and then improve them as they go.
Yeah.
That was quite a funny thing when we did our first iPhone launch. Again, I didn't really know what I was doing, and they had obviously a new camera and a new phone, and we had to go to all the photographers were going to the Mojave Desert to shoot it with all these great photographers, but the camera wasn't properly working because it doesn't at that point. They haven't fully calibrated it and stuff, so the engineers are still working on it until it's until a few weeks before launch, and then they've got it right, So it's
And do you think that's why it's so successful, like an Apple and also the other organizations that have obviously come out of Silicon Valley and that kind of fast pace? Is there a different mentality with the kind of the American kind of way in comparison to some of the British organizations?
Yeah, I think so. It was hard for me because I've never worked for an American company other than Apple. So it was hard for me to pull apart what was Apple and what was America.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a certain can-do-ness there that maybe we lack a little bit sometimes.
What, in Apple in particular?
No, well, just Apple, but also in America, I think there's a little bit of that. And I think, you've, as a leader there, you can get things done and get things done quite quickly. I don't know if that's true of working at any American company, but it certainly was true there. They're faster. They're faster to get things done.
Yeah.
And change course if it needs to be changed.
And in terms of the collaboration, that's obviously a key component to any sort of successful leadership. But obviously, there are lots of organisations that don't, are not able to achieve that across teams. So you said, how did you manage to do that? Because obviously, it's such a huge organisation, and you need to bring people together.
Yeah. It's a huge organization, but you're in your bit of it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like 100,000 people, even though it might be. But it is still large, and there's lots of different groups. So it takes a long time to get your head around who's where and what they're good at. But then once you have that's why this room was important, because you get everyone in the room and they put all the work on the walls, and then together you work it out. And that was a bit of a different way of working because in London, I was used to, teams come in 2s or 3s and you talk in little groups. There, because we didn't have time for that, we were all talking almost together in big groups. And it meant it was very collaborative, because if someone came up with an idea, that was like a good idea, and we put that on the wall, we should follow that one. Everyone would work on that for a couple of days. Right. And that person who wouldn't own that idea, the whole aspect of ownership was different. So you'd have to go to that person afterwards. They might not end up making it. Someone else might have bettered the way of making it. You have to go, look, I know you put that there at the beginning, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. But you had to be quite sensitive to ownership. Whereas in England, the traditional way is the team, they get the credit. If they win an award, they get an award for it. It's like a different kind of thing there.
Yeah.
But it works, but you can work fast that way.
Yeah. And how do you kind of really instill that creativity through everything? I think, and also from a skills perspective, I feel like in today's world, creativity, and it always has been absolutely key to kind of, business success, whether it's innovation, thinking of doing things in different ways. How do you build that into an organization?
Yeah, well, different organizations do it in, have their mantras and ideas, and I always remember, BBH was when the world says zig zag,
Yeah.
And others have got other ones, and I think you've got to have your own set of those, and you've just got to keep iterating them and things that you truly believe in. I always used to say, all roads lead to the work, and just make it about the work. And as long as we were talking about the work and we could say whatever we wanted, it wouldn't be personal because we were trying to get the work better. And I think you just, when you really care about the work as a leader, I think, in what I do, younger teams go, God, I want to work here because I can get great work out and this will really help me. So people stay late into the night working because they know that's a good chance they're going to do great work. Well, when you arrive at Apple, they give you a little card that says you can do the best work of your life here.
Yeah.
And they give that to everyone. But that's true. Other agencies say that in different ways, but you've got to really truly believe that you're going to get your employees are going to do the best work of their lives at your organization. And if you really believe that and carry that through in your actions, then people will move in heaven and earth to.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you find it easy to retain people in your teams, or was it that hard, as you said, sort of, I think you used the word relentless, of kind of in terms of kind of workload? Did people feel that inspired? Obviously, you're working for Apple, one of the greatest brands.
Yeah, Apple. No, yeah, it was. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of turnover. It was. We were making great work. Winning Creative Marketer of the Year, many years running, and advertising in the last 15, 20 years, it's gone through a difficult patch. There's lots of places that are struggling. Apple had the budgets. There's lots of good reasons to be there. But yeah, it was hard.
Yeah.
And it can be hard. But yeah, at the end of the day, people want to be where they can do great work.
Yeah.
If you're creative.
Yeah, you also. And you said, I think you got headhunted to work at Apple, and that's a accolade in itself, presumably. Were you doing kind of winning awards in the UK, working on some large brands?
Yeah, I don't know quite how they heard about me, but presumably, I've been on the other end of it now because I've been recruiting people when I was at Apple, and you used to go through the awards things and see what which names keep recurring, and then you go and find and talk to them and stuff. So yeah, they somehow found me, and it was the right time for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what makes a great creative, and why do you think? I'm just trying to kind of link the importance of that creative thinking and leadership, because I think they do work. I think we talked also about creativity and strategy, obviously hand in hand, really. If you're a good creative, really, you've got a strategic head,
I think,
vice versa.
Yeah, I think a good, I've always thought a good planner, a good strategy person is also quite creative, and a good creative should be quite strategic.
Yeah.
Those two go hand in hand. I think where creatives can come unstuck a bit is when they get promoted and suddenly they're creative director, and that's quite a different role. Because as a creative, you just love doing the work. You're a creative person. You just want to keep working and crafting.
You're just given the space to think and come up with ideas.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And often, they're quite introverted people. Not always. I mean, far from it. But I was quite shy, and I didn't really want to start running things. But at a certain point, you sort of need to do that to progress in a way, and then you can go through a difficult patch. I mean, I went through a difficult patch, because I was finding it quite hard. I was sort of trying to direct people how to do work, but then I just wanted to get my hands on it and do it myself. It was quite hard to relinquish control.
That's quite a hard thing for a leader, isn't it? Anyway, and that's sort of like letting people get on with it, but also
yeah, no,
if you love your work.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to sort of learn to let people fail a bit, and also just to sort of guide them and to want them to succeed as much as you wanted yourself to when you did it. And that can be a little rocky road. And I mean, that's actually, I do training now with, creatives who are trying to make that leap, because it can be a hard one.
Yeah. And that kind of whole concept of, I think, risk and failure is a really interesting one, because I think it's kind of, it feels like, from what I've heard, and it would be great to hear a bit about your experience again at Apple and with other big brands, there's sort of that permission to, obviously you want your work to be great and to deliver what it needs to deliver, but actually you're moving at pace. Sometimes things don't work or don't go as planned, etc. Was that something that was kind of part of the culture there?
Yeah, I mean, as part of the culture of anywhere I've worked that's been good is that when you make mistakes, and mistakes do happen, if they're well-intentioned ones, you were trying to do something different, you were trying to pushed the boundaries and maybe it didn't go quite right. That should be in some ways celebrated, and certainly not, you shouldn't be made to feel guilty about that. And I think everywhere I've worked has been about that.
It's pushing out of your comfort zone, isn't it? Because I think it's too easy, isn't it? Everyone you to stay within this is what we do, and actually, how do we push further? And that's
the whole point is that you're pushing the boundaries, and therefore, I think it's Uncommon who say, because I worked at Uncommon, and they're like, we're our happiest when we're on the edge of what's possible. And I think, therefore, you are going to sometimes take a wrong step. But I think what you've got to do is when you make those decisions, and Apple was good at this, and Uncommon are good at this, like you hold hands, with the client as well, and you go, okay, we're in this now, we're going to do this, and then it's a joint decision, and there's no like finger pointing afterwards. It's something you went into together. I think it goes wrong when you make false promises and there's not complete honesty, and you say you can do one thing, you do another. That's when things go badly. But if you're joined up at the beginning, then mistakes are shared.
Absolutely. No. And I mean, I know we talked about the fact that obviously Steve Jobs was no longer around when you were passed back. You said his presence was very much felt still. What was the leadership like there? How, you presumably you working into sort of the C-suite there, how did that kind of play out?
Yeah, I mean, they've got different characters there, they're all very strong leaders. They're all very confident, so I was quite, it can be intimidating with them. But I mean, one of the people I worked with a lot at the beginning was Johnny Ive, the designer of the iPhone and Mac and everything. I was like so nervous when I first met him. But he was amazing to me, because he was asking me more questions about the work I was doing than I could to him.
Amazing.
Well, we were making a film for the iPhone, and he was talking about, what angles are you doing, or why did you write it like that? And he was just almost like a child, like a curious child. And I think that curiosity and that kind of lack of ego, was amazing to me. It was like someone of his level. So he was inspiring. And he said lots of like really inspiring things to me about what creative people should be, and how you should mix up teams as well, so different kinds of creatives work together, and how different perspectives, how you should get quiet people to talk, how everyone should talk at a meeting, but how solutions are better than opinions. He didn't like all the kind of, everyone just sitting in rooms sort of talking about whether they like it or don't like it. He goes, well, give me an idea. An idea is better than an opinion. So there's lots of things. He was a very strong person, but he was very, without much ego to me.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously AI, big topic. It's always a conversation going on about that at the moment. So what impact do you think AI is having or will have on sort of creativity in businesses? Do you see it? Obviously it's here to stay, so we've got to work with it. How do you think it will impact the sort of that creative process at all?
Well, first of all, it's going to make it quicker, so everything's going to happen faster, and it already is happening with that. Whether it will be better, whether the work will be better, I don't know. I think I'm fine. I use it a lot just for the sort of almost like brainstorming, give me some ideas, and then it's rarely like great, but something it will say will kind of spark my own mind into doing something. Especially if I'm working alone, that's good. Especially when you're visualizing things for presentations, it's amazing, and it's getting better and better all the time. And maybe it will start having ideas that are better than ours. I don't know, but I'm not seeing evidence of that yet. I'm not like worried that in the next 5 years that's going to start happening. But it certainly is. If you were an agency doing average work, I would be worried. So I think it can do that. It can do average stuff. What it can't do is that amazing piece of work that that kind of everyone loves and comes out of nowhere. I don't see it doing that. So I think those kind of places are actually in a good place. If you're at that boundary where you're really going to push it, and I think AI is not going to beat you, but it'll take a lot of people's lunch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then you sort of mentioned earlier that you were working with a lot of kind of creatives who are looking to take that step up from the sort of creative in it to the kind of management or leadership.
Yeah.
What's the process for them? What are the things that can you talk about some of the things you think are absolutely critical to be a group creative director and to be a leader in that creative space, and how you transition?
Yeah, well, it's just, I mean, like, a big thing there is judgment, because some of those creatives might have been great at creating work, but they're not so good at it, and they'd handed it across to a creative director who then goes, this is the idea, that's the idea.
Yeah.
And it might not be in the right form yet, but so identifying what a good idea is, and keeping it really simple. So the battle for simplicity is always like the hardest thing. Being a really good listener, listening to all the opinions, but at the end of the day, you're making the call. So not making it a kind of coalition of opinions. Being selfless. I think that's probably the most important thing. You've just got to help them. You've got to give away your ideas sometimes, and work hard and not take the credit. And I think a good creative director that will take the most terrible brief in the building and do that to free up their creatives to work on the good stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to just then you've got to be able to inspire your teams, command respect, and that comes from just lots of conversations and lots of proving how much you care. So there's just lots and lots of little things, I think, and often also as a creative, you've probably come from one specific skill set. I came from writing. I was with an English degree. I was a writer. I had an art director. I lent on him a lot for that stuff. But as a creative director, you've got to be over all of it. So you've got to sort up on those skills that maybe weren't your prime skills and get good at those too.
And people talk always about bringing in, a great leader brings in people who are sometimes better than them at certain areas. That's what you do, isn't it? You bring in the best people around you to fill the gaps because you can't be brilliant.
Oh yeah. Definitely spend my whole life working with people that are way better than I was. That's the secret. And managing up as well, because often you feel like you're in the middle.
Yeah.
You've got CEOs kind of with their agenda, and you've got your teams working hard, and you're in the middle there, and you've got to soak a lot of that up, and not put that pressure on the teams.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in terms of sort of the impact of your work, obviously it's about kind of the successful launches, and obviously were you having to then report back to the board on kind of that impact and how well it was received? And were there any that didn't go so well that you felt you could have done more on?
I mean, the weird thing is you don't often get like sort of data back. It's quite a hard thing to measure in a way, but you just get the vibe if it's worked well or not. So really, like, a failure is if people aren't talking about it. It's not really
buying it at the end.
It's not really being chatted about. Yeah. But I mean, I've been lucky that most of the things, most of the brands I've worked on, that we've had lots of good people. We've been, things have gone pretty well. I can't think of any like things that have been absolutely awful. Backside, but it does happen.
It does. And so sort of the Silicon Valley vibe. I always hear and read about the kind of, it's just innovation everywhere. People all go to the same pub or the same bar. It's more bars in America, isn't it, rather than pubs? And you can kind of, you're sort of knocking shoulders with people from different organizations. Is that really true?
It wasn't really my experience. No, I didn't think, I didn't love it as a place to live personally. There wasn't a lot, I didn't feel there was a lot of culture there.
Yeah.
There were bars and things, but in the village where we lived, I met people from different organizations and stuff, and we would chat a bit. But I don't think I was like at the cool end of what Silicon Valley is, because a lot of people doing their own startups. Going into new
kind of.
There was a lot of VC stuff and biotech, and lots of people doing exciting things. And I was working for big organizations, so I was probably the coolest person in the room.
That's pretty cool, isn't it? Launching the iPads and.
Oh yeah, I mean right. But in Silicon Valley terms, it's kind of like being in the startups is where it's at. But when you live there, I think if you're a creative person, who's really interested in sort of books and films and art and history, and it's kind of a difficult place to live because it's not there. It's like, an hour and a half away in San Francisco maybe,
Sure.
but it's it's really a lot of people who are really into technology, from maths backgrounds.
You get the big uni intakes, don't you? Is it sort of Stanford and
Yeah,
MIT and things like that? Berkeley.
yeah, lots of incredibly intelligent people, but I didn't feel. Yeah, we ended up moving to Santa Cruz, which was a surf town, quite a hippie surf town. We felt far more in my comfort zone there. But yeah, it is. I'm glad I lived there. It's an exciting, different place.
And culturally, I mean, you would expect an organisation like Apple to be brilliant when it comes to its people in terms of driving a really positive culture, and obviously just working at, working for that brand itself. But presumably that was a big focus for the organisation in terms of how it looked after its people.
Yeah, yeah, and as I say, it's a sort of place that's split into lots of different places in a way. And so we were in the marketing division, and that was very well run, and people genuinely cared about each other, and you really felt that. I think as an organisation, they just put good people at the top of each of these divisions, and they sort of run themselves, and to some degree. You don't often put your head above the parapet and get that feeling of, oh, there's 100,000 people here, but occasionally you do. When you walk into the Apple Park building or something, and you see how enormous that is. And
is that how many people in Silicon Valley?
I'm not quoting that as figure, but there's
the enormity of.
There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of kind of partners and partner buildings and stuff. When I first got there, you're driving around the streets, and it's like the Apple logo is pretty much everywhere. But then Google's huge as well, and there's
they're all
Amazon. They're quite a lot of big places.
So what did you take home with you if you left there? What were the things that you took that you wouldn't have had before if you hadn't been through that period as a leader at Apple?
I think the speed of it I've taken through, and so I work quite quickly now. Quicker than I did before.
But there's a year-long kind of 6-month planning periods now in advertising.
Which have actually got shorter, I noticed, since I've come back anyway. So I think that's changing a little bit anyway. I think the craft as well, because I've rubbed shoulders with lots of designers there, as in graphic designers and photographic designers, people who, it's a different level of craft, so I learned a lot about that.
Really? In what way? Different level, just kind of?
Well, it's just so, they do these images and they just pour over them, and they just get, they'll do like 5,000 iterations to get the right one.
Okay.
That famous sort of Steve Jobs 1,000 no's, there's a lot done to get to the one right thing.
Right.
And you might even just be talking about something like shooting the angle of a phone. They'll shoot 2,000 angles to get the right.
Right, okay.
Right, so that you can't afford to take all of that back home because you haven't got the time. But
no, of course.
But they really care.
Yeah. So you left, what year did you leave Apple?
It was 2001.
Okay. And so what's been the sort of the key, what have you been doing since then?
I've worked for Uncommon for Creative Studio for 2.5 years, which was an amazing place to work. It's really, really creative culture there. But when I joined there, it's getting big now, but it was a lot smaller. So going from Apple to that was kind of, they was on one little floor, and I was like, wow, this is...
Haven't got your own room with a...
No, you're on the desk. Well, you didn't have your own room at Apple.
Post-it notes.
Yeah, exactly. And then what I've been doing is I wanted to stop that to free up some time to do some more coaching, because I've been coaching on an individual basis, but also for small agencies and businesses, just to help the creative process. Because I've noticed that a lot of places, they just don't have that process quite right. And it could burn a lot of time and energy. So to get, how to run all the way from brief to finished product, how to have those creative conversations properly. So I'm doing that, but I still love doing the work. So I'm sort of freelancing for Saatchi's at the moment and sort of other places.
Yeah.
So
brilliant.
Still enjoying it.
Oh, well, no, thank you. It's been, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I think all of the listeners as well, I'm sure, will have really enjoyed hearing a bit about the kind of the Silicon Valley world and also the kind of what it takes to be a creative leader. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
That's okay.
Cheers.